everyone. Welcome to this week's Karma Cards. I hope that you are having a beautiful week. So let me give you an energy update on what's happening right now. So we recently, I'm going to go back because this week we've had a few interesting events, and of course we have a few interesting events coming up. Over the last week, we had some incredible activity with the Schumann resonance that happened right around Easter. So the spiritual energy is naturally high around that period, but the Schumann machinery went offline for about 2.5 days, and I believe that's the longest it's ever been offline. And I've heard other intuitives say that when you see that going offline, it has to do with a timeline shift or timeline jumping, which I think is very cool. And what you want to look for if you're considering whether it was a timeline shift is what has shifted within you. What has shifted within you, what you're thinking, how things are going. Has something taken like a 180 turn? Many times when we're shifting these timelines, the intent is to shift us upward. With all of that blank Schumann resonance did come in a massive amount of solar energy coming in. So we also received high levels of solar energy. So I would say we did shift upwards, and it's starting to play out. We'll see what happens with that. What I am noticing is that things are falling away. And sometimes we don't perceive that as necessarily a positive or something beneficial. Until we go through the process and we realize that whatever fell away was replaced by something more resonant for us. So that's one of the ways you could look at it. Is there something happening in your life that feels like it's shifting or changing, maybe without your wanting to change it, right? It's just happening for you. And this can be relationships, this can be career, maybe the direction you're going in, maybe something new is coming in. Whenever something new comes in, something old does fall away. You might find that you've suddenly lost interest in things that you were very interested in, and new interests are starting to bloom and develop inside of you. So that's something I would pay attention to right now. Today's Wednesday, April 12th. When I'm recording this, yesterday was the 11th, and on the 11th, there's naturally a portal when we hit 11s. 11 looks like a doorway when you look at it, right? The two pillars standing, and you're moving through a doorway. So 11s always hold portal energy with them. But there was an amazing event that happened on the 11th, and that was Jupiter had a cazimi with the sun. Now, a cazimi is where the sun's light enhances the planet it's in a cazimi with. So in this case, the sun's light was enhancing Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is our largest benefic planet in our solar system, and it's considered a planet of expansion. So it's naturally a positive energy planet. And right now, the sun is at its exaltation in the sign of Aries. So the sun's more potent. The sun is in a very bright and aligned place. It's getting more cosmic energy to it in its current placement, and you add that with Jupiter, and there's an expansion of real positive energy. So you take that planetary alignment, which is giving us a message about an expansion of positive energy, and you pair it with the idea of a timeline jump to a more positive timeline. So those two things sort of co-merge, and this is what is happening in this week. So this week has a beautiful energy of expansion. And again, I want you to think about if there are things that seem to be falling away, it's because something big, beautiful, and positive is coming in, and there needs to be room in your life to hold that space. Now, this week, again, is kind of a softer week, astrologically speaking. We're going to look at the energy as we go deeper in. We are coming up to a couple of other big events for the month. The next thing that we're coming up to is on the 19th, and that is the second new moon in Aries. So we've already had one new moon in Aries, and this will be the second. So that means a repeating of themes. And really what you want to look at with new moons is what you're manifesting. And with a new moon in Aries happening twice, it's almost like you're getting a do-over or a chance to really get specific, go in deeper into detail, or focus the energy more. And it's also happening with a total lunar eclipse of the sun. So there is going to be a total lunar eclipse, and I'm still trying to find more details about that. But it's the beginning of an eclipse season. And eclipse seasons are also about a type of cleanup or moving something out of the way, removing a type of obstacle. So here we are moving into another type of astrological event, signaling the removal of something at the same time as something new is coming in and you're getting a second chance to do it. And by the way, on the 19th, we will be doing a new moon spirit circle in Aries. So if you want to join that, get more information about what the cosmic events are telling us, you can join it here or go into my description and click the link in my bio, and you can join us for that spirit circle. It comes with a live Q&A where you can ask me a personal question and I will answer that for you with my team, and you also get a recording. So if that sounds like something that feels in alignment to you, check out that link in the bio, and I hope to see you there. So we have that event happening, and then 2 days later, we've got the Mercury retrograde happening in Taurus. Now we started the year with a Mercury retrograde, and now we're going into technically our second one of 2023, and this is happening in the sign of Taurus. So what we can know is that we're going to be feeling that internal review process coming up where we're being asked to go over things again. So as you can see, there's this really interesting combination coming up of getting a do-over, look at it again, look at it more thoroughly. So starting with the second new moon in Aries, which is a type of do-over, followed directly by this retrograde in Mercury happening in Taurus, which is again about going over details around money, going over details around what you value, going over details about your personal sense of value and worth, are some of the themes. And then of course, our ability to kind of communicate that is something that we have to really check and stay conscious of to have ease through this time period. And that's going to be going on all the way till May 14th. So we're already in the shadow phase right now of this retrograde. So retrogrades always have a period where it's a shadow phase, and that means like a slowing down, right? It appears as if the planetary spin of Mercury is slowing down, shadow phase, so that it can revolve in the opposite direction. Even though it's not technically doing that, it appears to us from our planetary position that it is. So we have a shadow period that lasts for about a week or so before the event, and then a shadow period that lasts for a week or so after the event. So it's kind of one of those things where you can feel it for a little longer than we're actually in it. Now, I don't think of retrogrades as negative, although socially we talk about it as if it's a negative thing, because what we find during Mercury type retrogrades is Mercury is considered one of the malefic planets, although it's not as malefic as like Saturn. But the reason it's malefic is because it's fickle. So sometimes it works in your favor and sometimes it doesn't. And, Mercury rules over institutions of business, and it also rules over communication. So a lot of times we see issues when it comes to communication, like in our devices or our technology. And especially if you do business with technology, you tend to have snags and snafus, or you tend to have like emails that have to get resent, or links go missing, or something doesn't quite work right. You're trying to send something, it doesn't go through. Things like that happen, and people find that annoying, and so tend to think of it as a negative. But really what it's asking you to do is really consider what you're putting out there. And when it comes to our values and our sense of worth, I think that's a good thing, that we really want to consider, what am I broadcasting? What am I expressing or communicating about what's of value to me, or of worth, or my own sense of value and worth? And it gets us to sort of see how we've been operating through this period, and allow us that if we're looking, we can make adjustments to the way that we're communicating or expressing that type of energy. So like I said, those events are coming up. So we're sort of in again, this beautiful moment of positive energy and expansion and relaxation before we get into more of a going in and doing the introspective work and allowing ourselves to be a little bit more cautious with putting things out there, that we're actually considering it before we put it out there, and that we're practicing one of our greatest skills, which is listening. Mercury retrograde really can be a much easier process to go through if you really focus on listening and trying to hear. Many times miscommunication happens between people simply because we're sort of trying to sum things up in our own head or jump to the conclusion or assume about things. And when we do it during this period, tensions tend to be higher and people get a little shorter with each other, because part of what's happening is all of that assessment in our own head. So what it asks of us is to spend time in assessment or contemplation, but also be more conscious when we're communicating to others and really try to turn that energy. We have to really put some conscious effort into turning that inward eye back out to the other person and really trying to hear what they're having to say. And a thing that you can do during this time that's very helpful is say things like, what I heard you say was ... or can you please repeat that, or can you rephrase that, so that you're actually really trying to understand the position someone's coming from rather than jump to a conclusion. And that makes going through this period much easier with people. So the message I have for you from my team this week is about learning how to be in a state of grace. And this is something that I have to say I've have to contemplate it. I don't know if grace is one of my strong suits. I would like it to be. I like the idea of being in a state of grace, but I'll share with you what they're telling me that means. My team is saying to be in a state of grace is to have this beautiful ability to both allow and surrender and move out of resistance. So it's kind of their version of being in flow, right? So you're not resisting what's coming or the changes that are happening, because they want to let you know that there are changes that are happening. And many times we work to prevent change, which is the irony of that, is that change is the one constant in the universe. We're guaranteed things will change, even in a single day, right? We're guaranteed that morning will become afternoon, will become evening, and then night, and then morning again. So imagine if you were resisting the day, right? Imagine if you got up in the morning and you were like, I refuse to let afternoon happen, and I'm going to do everything in my power to resist the afternoon coming. Well, you can't, right? So we're not in grace. We're working against natural flowing energy, and we're trying, if we were to continue on that path, we would move into denial. We would be in denial that it's afternoon, and as the sun's going down, we'd be in denial that the evening is coming, right? We'd be holding on to the morning with all of our might. And so to be in a state of grace is to accept and flow with that change. And most of us can do that when it comes to a day, right? We wake up, we do our morning routines, we move into our afternoon routines, which then move into an evening routine, and of course a nighttime routine as well. Most of us can do that. But when it comes to the transformation of ourself, that's inevitable and coming forward, you are simply not the version of yourself that existed a year ago. Definitely not the version of you that existed 3 years ago. And the version of you that existed 10 years ago is a far cry from who you are now. And most of us work in some way to resist that. I mean, if you think about aging as an example, some people age with grace, right? They accept and move through the aging process with grace. And usually what you see is an individual that you admire. They're stately. They have this confidence and ease within themselves because they're allowing the process. But you can also see examples of people resisting and fighting that process. And so even though they might be able to maintain a visage of youth, what you can see is that they're not in a state of grace. They're in a state of usually kind of a mild panic at least, where they're fighting the inevitable. And the team wants us to know that during this time, we want to focus on being in a state of grace when it comes to our own self-transformation, and that if we can find that place of surrender to the process, it's going to be much easier for us. And it makes me think actually about the ascension process, because this process, if it's going the way I sense it's going, is one of incredible self-transformation. As I've shared with you in the past, my team told me years ago that we're literally shifting on a biological level. We are moving from a carbon-based being to a more plasma-based being. And just in that alone, if that was the only thing that was happening, that's an incredible transformation. I mean, that changes the game on so many levels, because you are technically more dense in light, but less dense in matter. And so your ability to move through the world is going to be a very different mode than what you're used to now. But with that type of physical transformation comes an amazing transformation of consciousness about what you think you are, about what you think you're here to do, about what you value even, as you continue to move forward. And they want to let us know that we are going through these cycles of upgrade. It's happening all the time. People are feeling it physically. We've talked about ascension symptoms, but it's not just that. You're going to find that, like I said earlier, there are things that your values shift and change, and things that you think are important or you're meant to work on suddenly shift, and it's like it's hollow. It's not the same. But if you were to follow your heart and follow the passion, you'd find where all the juice is again. So they're asking us to practice being in a state of grace and surrender. And again, let the will of God, let the will of Source come through you. And this one I find personally, as a person who probably is kind of willful naturally, I'm an Aries naturally, so we've got a strong sense of willpower, right? And those who recognize the stubbornness in themselves, you also have a strong sense of willpower. It can feel a little intimidating to allow some force to come in and work through you, even though that's what we're here to do and that's what we naturally are. This idea of the ego is what we're really talking about here, the stubbornness and the holding on and the determination that it's going to go your way or a very specific way. That's actually coming through the ego. And what it means to allow the will of God or the will of Source to come through is to allow the soul to be the one that leads, right? Let the soul lead, let the higher self lead. All of these are really just other words for something that's connected to a greater source of energy, something beyond what the ego can sense and understand. And the will of our soul is very different than the will of our ego, right? The ego is very tapped into the world it believes it inhabits. And the idea of the ego is to have as much power in this space as it possibly can, starting with power over the self and then advancing into power over others. And we watch that play out when we're watching the world and people in it, where you can see they're very ego driven, right? They're very fixated on what they can hold on to and control or amass and grow. Whereas the will of the soul takes us in a very different direction. And this part is becoming, it always has been strong, but it's coming forward because part of the self-evolution we're going through when it comes to ascension is an attempt, and this is why there's a biological change. There is an attempt for the soul to begin to inhabit the body. Now, what my team has explained to me is our soul doesn't inhabit our body. So the idea of the soul being inside the body isn't quite accurate. They say the soul surrounds the body. So the etheric bodies, the astral body, all your emotional body, your mental body, these are all layers around you, and they're encapsulated in your aura. And in this space around you is the soul. This is why we've got such a strong sense of self-awareness. It's like, when someone's too close to you and you're like, get out of my bubble. It's like, get off of, you're stepping on my soul. Like, get off of me, get off of my body. Because actually that space of awareness, this is all the soul. And the beautiful thing is the soul expands. So as you expand your bodies, you expand your aura, you're expanding your soul's reach. Your soul starts to take up more space. And one of the things they say is that what's going to be different as we become more of this plasma, light-holding energy being is that the soul can then enter the body, and that's where new things start to happen. So that's one of the goals of this time. So it's asking us to surrender to this process where the soul is going to not only lead you and drive you, but it's going to start to merge and be enveloped and taken in a deeper way. And this is a bigger conversation where we get into, the inner temple alignment that lives in your heart, and how it's going to open more so that this soul energy works through there. And I don't mean to say that your soul isn't also in the body. I do believe that there are points at which the soul comes in and out of the body, but predominantly it's around us. It's around us, and it's informing the body as it lives around us. And there's going to be, like I said, this shift from externally around us to internally within us once the body is prepared to hold that amount of energy and light. At this point, with the body being so dense, with the body being more carbon-based, the soul simply could not inhabit a body because it would deteriorate the body. The light of our soul is so strong and so intense that the body literally couldn't hold it. So again, we're shifting into something where it can hold this energy. And as we do so, we develop more of our psychic abilities come online. More stuff starts to come online. And they're telling me that right in this period of time that we're in right now with this Jupiter expansion, this Cazimi with the sun, these energies, your intuitive abilities, which have always been there, are coming more online right now. They're sharper right now. So visions of your future or where things are going or how things are going to turn out are actually quite easy to access as long as you're surrendering to the process. It's like one of these things where instead of trying to build it, which is something I actually encourage people to do, and I like doing, is imagine the future you want and try to move into that. In this week, they're asking us to allow it. What do you see? Right? What do you see? If you were to surrender to this process, what would you see? And that it's going to show you more. It doesn't mean there isn't a time for building, but right now this is a time for looking or observing. And one of the things that we know is like as this self-transformation occurs, like they talk about, many people have talked about, as we move into higher and higher frequencies, intuitive abilities really kick online. You've had them the whole time. You're even using them the whole time. They just are buffered or off. And part of that is because of free will and belief, right? So if you've been told there's no such thing, and that's your belief, then you're naturally buffering and turning them off, but you can't completely deaden them because they are tools that allow you to maneuver through this world with some sense of awareness and safety. So you need them. You just don't know you're using them. It's almost like they're going on autopilot without your conscious awareness. And the more conscious you become of them and the more you embrace them and are open to them and believe in them, the more you start to get the synchronicities that show you that, yeah, they're online and they're working. We don't always have ability to access them raw because many times we're doing it from an ego space. So if you're thinking, okay, I want to access my intuitive abilities to get something, right? If this transactional energy comes in, like who's the person I'm supposed to be with, I want to see them. Well, we might get blocked from that because that's usually ego, and the ego's intent behind that is to try and control it or see it or sway it, when really we want to be emotionally detached from what we're seeing, hearing, sensing, and just allow the information in. Not everything that I get intuitively for myself is positive news, right? Many times it's the things I need to know. Sometimes it's a bummer. I mean, I can tell you a story of like, I had a boyfriend in the past. This is my early 20s. Wasn't a good relationship, but I was hanging on. And I remember that I woke up one morning from a very intense dream where he had packed up all of his stuff and left. And it was a terrible dream. And I was like, oh my God, who would do that? So I woke up and I was like, you're not going to pack up all your stuff and leave. And the guy went white as a sheet and spent a lot of time convincing me that no, that's not the case. So I went off to work, came home, and what do you know? Everything was gone, and he left his dog. He left his dog, but he took his furniture. So that's an example of getting a premonition that it's not good news. It's not something I would choose or want to see, but it was necessary for me to see it almost as like a mental preparation, because the shock of it was lessened by kind of knowing, and it was a confirmation that things were working, but it wasn't the kind of confirmation I was looking for, right? So what I'm trying to say is when the ego is involved, trying to access our psychic abilities, the ego is going to try and manipulate it or twist it or look for things that are beneficial or that we would want, because that's an emotional or ego-based approach. When you are truly emotionally detached from what you see, then you can actually see accurately and get information. And like I said, it's a mixed bag. Whatever you see is what you're meant to see or experience or intuit, because it's meant to help you along your personal journey, even if it doesn't look like it initially. So our job right now is to find that state of grace and lean into the transformation that is upon us. And as we do, our psychic abilities show themselves to us and they tune up. And the more we can stay, the state of grace is one of surrender. So I allow what's happening. It's one of acceptance. I accept what's happening. And it's one of detachment. I'm okay no matter what's happening. And when we hit those three, we find that beautiful place of grace. And with that, let's do this week's karma card. All right, if you're new to karma cards, let me quickly show you how these work. I have 3 decks of cards here: planets, signs of the zodiacs, and the houses of astrology. And I've already asked the team, what is the message you have for us this week? And I get 2 sets of answers. A set in red, which are action related, and a set in blue, which are outcome related. And the way that you play is you tune in with that beautiful intuition of yours and feel into, what do you need this week? Are you looking for action-related guidance, or are you interested in how things resolve, how things come out? And of course, you can always choose both. While you're choosing, let me tell you the timing for this reading. This reading is for April 12th through April 19th, which is the second new moon in Aries. Now, the flavor of this reading, we've got the South Node. So remember when I told you about all the letting go and the surrender? This is what it's asking us to do. So we know that right now the energies aren't about moving forward, but really about what we need to let go of. In the sign of Gemini, which is the sign of communication, right? This is the communication, what you need to be known, and how you're expressing that. Now, interestingly, we also have it in the 9th house, which is the house of mental expansion. This is the house that is actually ruled by Jupiter through the sign of Sagittarius. So Jupiter shows up in this, which is part of that beautiful energy that came through yesterday. If you have chosen action, your spiritual action at this time is to remember what you want to be known as if it came from God. So remember what I told you about let the will of source come through you? They've been hitting us with this message for 7 months straight. Every full moon for the last 7 months has come through with let the will of God work through you. So remember what you want to be known as if it came from God. So if you were to allow that to happen, if you were just be like, okay, source, tell me what it is that you want me to share. Tell me what it is that you want me to share. If you were to sit with that as a meditation, it would come right through you. So they're asking you to remember it. I would say that a good way to do that is to contemplate or meditate, because this isn't something that's new information. It's actually a soul imprint that's going to come out. So if you want to do that, sit in meditation or contemplation and just keep saying, I allow the will of God or source to come through me. Let me know what it is you wish me to share. And as you sit with that, it's going to come through. Mental action at this time. Reconsider what is believed about the philosophies and laws involved. This is interesting because part of what they're asking you to do here is consider your relationship to Source, to God, and what you believe God is, or what that relationship is. Is it something where you are, it's higher than you, disconnected from you, external from you? Is it something within you? Either way you go, or no, there is no God. We're all being asked to reconsider that. It doesn't mean you have to throw anything away. I know that sometimes people get scared of looking at other directions because they're worried they're going to lose something they have. And here's usually what happens. If you're open to reconsidering or looking at the same subject from a different angle, if it's your true belief, it strengthens. It just reconfirms itself within you. And if it isn't a strongly held belief, then it shows you more, shows you something that you need to see about it. So we're in that situation. We're being asked to reconsider what you believe around the philosophies of allowing source energy to work through you, or the will of God to work through you, and what that would mean. All right, physical action at this time. Now is not the time to use the quickest way and do it in a big way. So this, again, isn't something where you have to stop your life and pull everyone around you and try to go deep. Again, this is a small, sometimes the most profound moments happen in the smallest moments, meaning like a quiet moment with yourself. It used to happen to me a lot that, I'd be in school and whatever was being taught was just, I wasn't connecting with it, and I would just go off into trance. And then, of course, in the middle of math class, in a trance, getting some kind of deep wisdom or insight that had nothing to do with the class, but what I was connecting to. And that's the feeling they're giving me, is that it's not something where you have to do a big production. You don't have to set up a giant ritual. You don't have to surround yourself in crystals and candles and put on music. It can happen like that, but that's not really where it's going to happen right now anyway. Where it's going to happen right now is in those small moments where you actually allow yourself to sort of, again, detach or disconnect or not try so hard. And as you just relax into it, allow and surrender to the moment, that's when this information can easily come right in. So now let's look at outcomes for the South Node in Gemini in the 9th house of mental expansion. The spiritual outcome is there will not be information to explain spiritual values. I love it when they do that. So again, there's not a philosophy involved around it. You're not going to get a big explanation. You're only going to get the information you need, right? So again, if it's, what do you want me to express? What is the message that I'm meant to share? It might be very simple. It might be a very simple, honest, and quiet message, but it's a powerful message nonetheless. It's not going to come with deep explanations and a whole bunch of histrionics around it. It's going to be just something that I get the feeling like sometimes when these things come through, they are profound, but they're so profound, they're so obvious at the same time that you're like, really? It's that? I was kind of hoping you'd tell me that I needed to move to Tibet and sit on a mountain and meditate for years, and then suddenly I was going to be activated into a rainbow light body. And many times it's like, love yourself, love other, be love. And you're like, okay, so it's the same message as always, right? And it might just be that. That doesn't mean that it's not a true and authentic and powerful message. It just means that it doesn't have the theatrics around it that you might want around a deep spiritual message. Mental outcome at this time: anxiety about communications, about long-range thinking or travel. And also, this is one of those things where sharing it might also feel weird. Like, if you might have a very strong personal moment is what I get. very strong personal moment. The message comes through strong, like vibrate love or be authentic or something like that comes through. But it's not just the words or the thought form that comes in, but it's the deep feeling and how it resonates through the body. And it might be something that feels profound, but it's a small moment. And there might be a desire to share it, but then you recognize that there's really, translating it to other people, it loses something in the translation. And that's what I get is coming up. It loses something in the translation when you're trying to express how profound it is. So what I'm getting about that is either don't expect much from it because the message was for you. So if you do try to share it and you're having this really profound sensation and you share it and you get, back, don't take it as a slight. It was powerful for you because you are who it's meant for. Recognize we're in the Mercury shadow, the Mercury retrograde shadow too. There is something lost in the translation. That doesn't mean that the message is any less powerful. It's just not as easy to communicate it. Physical outcome at this time. Trouble resulting from the fluctuations of what is to be shared. Again, it's not an easy period for communication. A lot of people are in the same boat as each other and we're not all getting the same message. And this is where it gets tough because it's like we can feel like we found the key to the mystery of life sometimes, and it's so profound and it's so right, and we try to share it because we're like, I found this key and it's so profound, it'll change your life, and you go to share it and it's like everyone's like, that's not it, that's not the key. That can be where we get into trouble because then the ego tries to kick in and go, oh, you're wrong, or oh, they're wrong, and that's where we get divisive. We don't need to. Just understand that there are thousands of keys to many different locks. Not all of us unlock with the same information. And that's okay. Your key is still very powerful and profound. It's simply yours. It's simply your message. And more importantly than sharing it sometimes is just living it. And I think if we can allow that, we sort of avoid the trouble of trying to share something that's so profound to us and getting a poor reception or a lackluster reception to it. I mean, I can think of times where I've had this myself and I've gone to share it with someone and they were like, oh, interesting. And I'm like, oh my God, why don't you get it? Like, why don't you get it? That was so profound. And then you realize, yeah, it was profound in it was validating something deep within you. And that's what it was meant for. They keep showing me, in my mind's eye, my team keeps showing me like, you guys no one's going to get the whole puzzle handed to them. So if we're thinking we're going to get the whole puzzle handed to us, we're in for a disappointment. They said the puzzle pieces have been evenly distributed. So everybody's got a little piece of the puzzle. And the goal is to try to open the mind and receive as much as we can, and you will see a bigger portion of this magic puzzle that we're all holding. Humanity holds it. I'm pretty sure if we step back and look at life as a whole, there it is. But we will see it as we open our mind and allow other perspectives to come through without the fear of losing ourselves in that process. And then we'll get close to seeing this great mystery, but no one's going to be handed the whole mystery. You've just acknowledged and confirmed your piece of the puzzle, and it's a powerful piece and a necessary piece, and we need it. And just because it can't necessarily be expressed or shared in a way that would feel really validating to us doesn't make it any less valid. You've got something good. Hold on to that with an open heart and hold it with grace. Just allow it. Accept it, appreciate it without trying to shape it. Just let it be what it is, and it's going to be an amazing gift. A small gift maybe, but potent and powerful, and it's going to help you through this next period that we're going through. And so with that, I'm sending you so much love. Have an amazing week, and I will see you at the next Karma Cards. Mwah.